WBAL Radio app.
We just heard during our newscast that Governor Wes Moore is going to be testifying today in front of the Maryland State Senate Finance Committee on the acceleration, Brian, the push to get the minimum wage from where it currently stands at $13.25, I think it is, up to $15 an hour by October 1st. It's supposed to be phased in over the next couple of years. There was a hearing on Monday in front of the House Economic Matters Committee. By the way, the chairman of that committee, Delegate C.T. Wilson, Brian's going to be joining us tomorrow morning, everybody, here on the C4 and Bryan Nehman show at 8 o'clock. So listen up for that. But he said, as this bill is in front of his committee, the acceleration minimum wage, I think it's a conversation. I think delegates are generally concerned. We're here to make tough decisions. Putting on CPI, that meaning the inflation index, takes that decision away from us. I agree, Chairman Wilson. Joining us right now to talk about where things stand with this accelerated minimum wage increase is a good friend of the show, Michael Halloran. He's the state director of the National Federation of Independent Businesses. And Brian, I think you'll understand they're opposed to this bill. Michael Halloran, first of all, good morning to you.
Hey, Mike.
Good morning, gentlemen. How are you? Thanks again, as always, for having me on this morning to talk about the big issues impacting our business community.
You put out a very strong statement on behalf of NFIB and what small business people are saying about this. Can you tell our audience, what are you hearing from the folks you represent?
Well, I think there's a lot of angst, particularly for our smallest businesses and especially those in our hospitality and retail sectors that are going to be, frankly, the most impacted by speeding up the phase-in of a minimum wage of $15 by October 1 of this year. You know, keep in mind, guys, that for our smallest employers, those with 14 or fewer, they weren't expecting a $15 minimum wage until July 1st, 2026. So this is a significant change, a change that's going to cost them tens of thousands of dollars starting this year.
So what would that mean for them in the planning situation for having, to deal with, obviously a much higher cost?
Yeah, it means they might as well take their budgets that they laid out at the beginning of this year and set them on fire. Because, I mean, that's essentially what it boils down to. I mean, look, we are not trying to indicate that the governor or the supporters are doing anything nefarious, but frankly, at the end of the day, a small employer is sitting there feeling like the rug is being pulled out from underneath them because of, there was very, very tough negotiations back in 2019 when the General Assembly decided to pass a $15 minimum wage over the objections of the business community. But there was some understanding, again, particularly for our smallest employers, that a $15 minimum wage is going to take some time. And now it seems like, the time has come well ahead of schedule.
Let's do it now, right? Get it in now. We're joined by Michael Halloran, once again, National Federation of Independent Businesses, largest group representing independent business, small businesses in the country. When it comes, Mike, though, to that hearing this past Monday, Brian Sears, good friend of the show, also from Maryland Matters, covered that. It seemed like delegates, even Democrats, were concerned about accelerating this. Are you getting some of that even from some Democrats?
Yeah, I think so. As you pointed out at the top, the chairman, Delegate C.T. Wilson, he's absolutely right. The General Assembly is there to take the votes on these very, very tough issues. I bet also they're still probably feeling it from their constituents about a missed opportunity to untie the state's gas tax from the CPI last year. I think very much, that combined with frankly the decisions that they made just a few years ago, I think they're rather hesitant to kind of, the way I've been calling it is an easy bake oven. It's set it and forget it. And I don't think they want to go down that path again.
Yeah. Listen, we hear often, and I know that I have said this myself, that if you raise the minimum wage, what you're going to do is you're going to force a lot of small businesses to either cut their workforce or put people part-time, cut hours in some way, or raise prices. Is that true? Do you have data to show that is true? And how quickly do you think that would be true here in Maryland if it goes up to $15 an hour by this fall?
Well, I think it is true. Look, at the very beginning of the year, the minimum wage increased again because of the 2019 law, which, by the way, if we do pass this increased phase-in this year, that's going to constitute 3 increases in less than 2 years. But we do have data showing that employers, yes, they are raising their prices. They are finding this money somewhere, and in many, many instances, it's very unfortunate. Look, I was actually kind of surprised that the governor excuse me, brought with them some employers to talk about, the benefits of such a bill, when by their own testimony, this bill isn't going to even impact them. Why? Because they do have higher prices. They do have more access to capital, and good for them. Look, I don't want to hold any business owner's success against them. That's fantastic. But the fact is, every business is not the same. So these one-size-fits-all mandates, like we're trying to do here for a minimum wage, does not work, unfortunately.
Michael Halloran, when it comes to, and you alluded to it, I want to talk about the decision that's been made to basically say, let's never vote on this again. Let's tie this to the inflation index, CPI, same way we did the gas tax. Now, still, we'll go on the record saying over and over again, the most cowardly legislative thing I've ever seen is to not take a yes or no vote on something that takes money out of the pockets of Maryland citizens. Couldn't get away with it when I was there. But just talk about the significance of that, because now employers will have to watch inflation, not the political, things in Annapolis, to determine how much they're going to pay folks.
Exactly. It's just one more thing that now they have to worry about when they're doing their budgets. They just don't have to worry about their own economy within their own four walls. They need to worry about the economy in the BW corridor, including Northern Virginia. I mean, we're asking a lot of our small employers, and that's one thing I've been emphasizing. It's not just the minimum wage increasing, okay? Look, last year, the legislature went ahead in the closing days of session and passed a massive 3-point-something billion payroll tax called the paid family medical leave insurance, which, by the way, they have to come back and fix this year. It's not just a minimum wage. They have payroll taxes. They have unemployment insurance taxes. They have workers' comp. So it's not, I keep telling folks, it's not, these things don't happen in a silo, right? So when we're talking about a regional CPI and, how the economy's doing, that, frankly speaking, an employer, a small business owner, they're not, by most accounts, worried about the global economy. They're worried about the economy within their four doors.
Yeah.
Excuse me, four walls.
Four walls, that too, yes.
Well, what about the impact that obviously it's going to have on, the Eastern Shore, Western Maryland, Southern Maryland versus, Montgomery County, Baltimore County, where it can be more absorbed, obviously, for those businesses that, have a more affluent people and also, obviously, can charge a little bit more.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Look, our good friend from Western Maryland, Delegate Weibel, brought up this issue, brought it up to the governor, asking him to consider. Yeah, because you're absolutely right, Brian. I mean, a dollar stretches differently in Western Maryland, Southern Maryland, the Eastern Shore than it does in the BW corridor. And so, folks there, they need to recognize that. There's a recognition of that in other instances, namely our prevailing wage laws. Our prevailing wage laws take that into account. That's the amount of money that somebody bidding on a state contract has to pay their workers. The state understands in that instance, hey, look, things are different out in Western Maryland or Eastern Shore, so we need to be cognizant of that. And I think there's unfortunately a disregard for that in this bill by just throwing everybody, not just in terms of the size of the employer, how many employees you have, but no matter where you are in the state, we're all throwing you into the same bucket, and we're doing it by October 1st this year.
Yeah, just on that note, Montgomery, you can do this by county. Yep. These counties can decide to do this. I believe Montgomery County's minimum wage right now is already $14 an hour, depending on how many employees you have. If you have over more than 50, it's well over $15 an hour. So it can be done county by county. It may be the best way to do it than forcing the same amount on, Kent County as you would in Montgomery County. Just seems a little ridiculous.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And again, I think there's sometimes, folks when they get to Annapolis, they kind of just get siloed. They worry about their district, what's going on back home, as it relates to their job in Annapolis. But I know as the president of the Senate is very fond of saying, we are not just senators from our districts, but we are the Senate for the entire state of Maryland. Same holds true for the House. When they're here in Annapolis, yes, it's important to think about how things are going to impact their districts and their constituents, always. But they're also making decisions that are going to impact folks way outside of their districts.
National Federation of Independent Businesses. Michael Halloran is on board with us. And Mike, the other thing I heard, even when they raised the minimum wage to $15 an hour, just a few years ago from small businesses, long before the state came along, I was paying my employees over minimum wage. I was paying them more than that. And when you do something like this, you almost penalize those businesses who might be paying like a couple of bucks over what currently is minimum wage and don't take that into account. Are you hearing some of that from your members too?
Absolutely. It's what we refer to as wage compression. It's not just impacting somebody making minimum wage, which, look, we could probably spend an entire show debating about, who the minimum wage is geared towards, new employees, those re-entering the workforce. But beyond those just making the minimum wage, also folks making, like you said, a couple bucks, $3 beyond the minimum wage, now they're not going to only expect more to make up for it October 1st, but every year when that CPI goes up, because remember, they're not going to move the minimum wage down if there's deflation or negative inflation. They're going to keep moving it on up year over year, but that same worker is going to say, hey, look, the new guy that's making minimum wage just got, 25, 50 cent an hour increase. Where's my 25% increase an hour?
Yeah. Do you have any data or statistics on who makes minimum wage in Maryland, like what the age range is? Like, are they teenagers? My point is that it seems to me like most of the people who are making minimum wage these days are probably entry-level teenagers, working in restaurants and things like that.
Yeah, Brian, you're absolutely right. With obviously a lot of exceptions, you're absolutely right. The minimum wage are folks that are doing part-time work. They're doing work in particular sectors, again, usually retail and the hospitality sectors. Again, the idea that the minimum wage should be able to sustain a family of four with one working parent, that's just not the case. That was certainly not the intention of the minimum wage.
Well, Michael Halloran, we're going to monitor what happens after today's Senate Finance hearing and kind of where things go now. So, like I said, we have Delegate C.T. Wilson joining us tomorrow. We'll even ask him about his own committee. But please keep us aware, as you do very well, what's going on, because this is one of those things really that will hurt businesses. Particularly if we're heading the end of the year, Brian and Mike, they're talking about the recession kind of hitting us at the end of the year. All those economic factors, and they want to do this now, Mike.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And again, if I can leave you guys with one thing, your listeners, they're very smart and savvy people, right? So why you have me come on here and dumb them down, I'll never know. But I tell you, truly one thing for our employers is that it's not just a minimum wage. It is all of these other issues that honestly, the Annapolis just seems to keep sending their way year after year after year.
Well, once again, you are out there fighting a good fight, Michael Halloran, National Federation of Independent Businesses State Director. Thank you, my friend.
All right, thanks always, fellas.
Good to have you on.